Hello and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be looking at doing some USB debugging. We've looked at putting some debugging information on the screen before, but this time we're going to look at sending it out of the USB port. We're going to cover some conditional assembly and how to use the USB virtual printer. You're going to need a recent version of Easy80 ASM, at least version 1.4 or above. You'll need your Agon connected to your computer with the USB cable. And on your computer you'll need some sort of PC serial monitor software. Different versions are available depending if you're running on Linux, Mac or a Windows PC. We'll be looking at 4 new VDP commands that are available. VDU2 to enable the virtual printer, VDU22 to disable the screen, VDU6 to enable the screen, and VDU3 to disable the printer. Of course, these are all documented on the Agon Console8 wiki. So today we're going to look at a very simple Hello World program, but with some additional debugging available. At the very top I've included a debugging equate and set this to 1. So our assumption here is whenever we set this to 1 we want to be debugging, or set it to 0 if you don't. I've created a macro which is going to do our debugging routine. You could put this macro in a separate macros file, but I've included it here so that this file is all self-contained. So the macro starts with saying you want to run a debug message, and which message do you want to send out. Now here's the clever part. Inside the macro there's an if and endif definition. If debugging, that is the debugging number we set here, then it will assemble this code. However, if debugging is 0, then this entire set of code would not be assembled and won't be included in your final application. So what's going on inside this routine? Well, to ensure that we don't change any of our registers, I'm storing any of the registers that might get changed by the routine at the start and then bringing them back at the end. So AF and HL. Firstly, we use those commands VDP2 and 21 to enable the printer and disable the screen. What that does is mean that any further commands that you send to the VDP don't get printed onto the screen, but do get processed and sent out through the USB port. We can then pick those up on a printer or a virtual printer. We're then going to load HL with the pointer to the address of the message we want to send and call a print string routine, as we've done in the past. And then finally we will re-enable the screen and disable the printer. So let's look at our main body of our program. It's very simple. All we're doing is sending a message of Hello World in the normal way. But I've put in here this debug message at the start and at the end of our code with 2 different messages. We've started and we've completed. And those messages are stored at the bottom here. Message started and message completed, each one terminating in a 0. So hopefully what we'll see is a message to say we've started. The Agon will then print its message on the display saying Hello World, and then we'll get another message to say it's been completed. So here I've got the Agon connected, I've loaded up our application, and I've also got a serial monitor running on my Mac to see what comes in. The Mac needs to be set to 115200 for the baud rate with 8 bits and no parity and 1 stop bit. Make sure you're connected to the correct serial port and then do connect. So now we're listening to anything from the Agon that gets sent out. So if I run the program on the Agon, lo and behold, it's done the Hello World message onto the Agon screen, but out of the serial port through the USB it's sent the 2 messages. We have started and we've completed the task. Hopefully you'll find this another method of debugging your code when you don't want to be putting things onto the display. Using the conditional assembly is also a useful way of ensuring that your debugging code is not included in a final release of your binary. I'm sure you can find other uses here, such as sending out the current status of different registers and such like.